Through my project, I've discovered that in America, there is an extreme lack of individualism and more of an emphasis on conformity. Therefore, I have drawn the conclusion that being yourself. When trying to be yourself, you will find it is better to learn from your own mistakes, create your own path, and do what you love rather than to do what everyone else has done before you. It's more important to stand alone than to stand for something that you don't believe in. By doing this, you'll become your own person and stand out in a positive way rather than adjusting to a characterized society. To start, I shared a personal experience of when I had to decide whether I wanted to go to a school during the summer for a month. I had all these different opinions being thrown at me, and I decided it was better to just block them out and make the decision for myself. And I'm really glad that I did, because I think by making my own decision, I was able to enjoy my time at my school in an own unique way rather than being forced to do something. I then moved into talking about whether it's better to be a leader or a follower. And 58% of people said that it is better to be a leader versus a follower. And here are some of the points that were talked about. One person said, when choosing to lead or follow, it is a great idea to sit down and scrutinize your leader's ways of commanding. If your leader's principles are corrupt, then you would not want to continue to follow them. At this point, it's better to be a leader than a follower. And on the opposite side, we have, if there's already a capable leader in place, sometimes the most effective and responsible thing to do is support that leader rather than trying to take over their role. If everybody tried to lead, civilization would crumble and societies would break apart. Both of these are extremely good points, but in all, I said that the majority of the population says it's better to be a follower than a leader because it's the easiest thing to do. But it is better to be yourself than to pretend to be something that you're not, to stand alone rather than to stand with a crowd that you don't agree with. I then looked into Taylor Swift and all of her work on trying to encourage people to be their own person and to embrace who they really are. So I took the quote, "If you're lucky enough to be different, then don't change." And I found a video of her talking about how she's glad that she stuck to that saying and how she hasn't changed for anyone because, as you can tell, it has definitely paid off for her. So here's just a short video showing that.
You take a deep breath and you walk through the doors. It's the morning of your very
Looking back at being 15, I wouldn't have changed anything. If I had been popular, I would have been perfectly content with staying where I was.
Seen in a while, try
It just wasn't the cool thing to be trying to do anything different. In the real world, if you have something about yourself that's different, you're lucky. It's not a curse.
At 15.
I then talk about Dr. John Gurdon, who has recently won a Nobel Peace Prize for an important discovery in DNA. In high school, he had a lot of trouble in biology, and his high school biology teacher told him that his dreams of becoming a scientist were a sheer waste of his time and of all those who have to teach him because it would not come true because he was unable to memorize simple biological facts. However, he came over this challenge, not only the challenge of becoming a very successful scientist, but of blocking out, ignoring the comments of someone who is an extreme mentor in your life, and now keeps this letter above his desk at work. A lot of us are familiar with the poem The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost, and the last few lines say, "I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference." This poem is an example of standing out and being different than the rest of the world. Frost could have taken the path that had already been traveled and mapped up before him, but he decided to be different and figure out the second path for himself, and upon doing this, he says, has made all the difference. Lastly, I talked about how in education and in schools, there is a strong sense of conformity and not enough individualism. And through this video that I found, they show a study that was made about how young children who used to have such extreme, unique qualities begin to lose those special qualities about them because they have been educated and been forced to conform to today's societies.
So, there are tests for this. One kind of cod example would be people might be asked to say, how many uses can you think of for a paperclip? One of those routine questions. Most people might come up with 10 or 15. People who are good at this might come up with 200. And they do that by saying, well, could the paperclip be 200 foot tall and be made out of foam rubber? Does it have to be a paperclip as we know it, Jim? Now, there are tests for this, and they gave them to 1,500 people. This is in a book called Breakpoint and Beyond. And on the protocol of the test, if you scored above a certain level, you'd be considered to be a genius at divergent thinking. Okay? So my question to you is, what percentage of the people tested, of the 1,500, scored at genius level for divergent thinking? Now, you need to know one more thing about them. These were kindergarten children. So what do you think? What percentage at genius level? 80. 80, okay. 98%. Now, the thing about this was it was a longitudinal study. So they retested the same children 5 years later, age of 8 to 10. What do you think? 50? They retested them again 5 years later, ages 13 to 15. You can see a trend here, can't you? Now, this tells an interesting story, because you could have imagined it going the other way, couldn't you? You start off not being very good, but you get better as you get older. But this shows two things. One is we all have this capacity, and two, it mostly deteriorates. Now, a lot of things have happened to these kids as they've grown up. A lot. But one of the most important things that happened to them, I'm convinced, is that by now they've become educated.
To conclude my project, this is what you see in every single person, just very black and white characteristics, someone who just goes through the ringer, going to school, hanging out with friends, and then you go underneath and you see what makes them so unique and so amazing. And the sad part is that we all hide that underneath kind of an iceberg, but if we bring those qualities to the surface, you'll find that you'll be more of yourself and that people will want to be with you because you are such a unique and genuine person.